Welcome to Mission Log Live tonight, a special episode suggested by you. We're living in an interesting time where the whole world is concerned with a viral threat that has raised along with it a number of social, moral, political, and ethical issues. Now, Mission Log is a show primarily about Star Trek, but that fiction has always been about tackling real-world concerns and the humanity that they affect. The topic tonight was suggested by Mission Log listener Scott, who put what we're going through in the same terms used by Star Trek's foremost Vulcan. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. As always, we'd like to hear from you. You can weigh in on the topic. You can let us know what you're doing while staying safe, and just let us know that you're okay. My guests tonight are producers and co-hosts of Shabam, a podcast you'll find here on the Roddenberry Network. Their show is about science and principles of critical thinking. Oh, sure, their first season was all about a zombie outbreak, but it was also about virology and medicine and survival. It seemed appropriate to tie that in tonight. I'd like to welcome to the show Wendy Roderweiss and welcome back to the show Josh Kurz. How's it going tonight, guys?
Hey, John.
Good, John. Hi, John.
Good. I'm so glad to have you both here. Hopefully everybody has listened to Shabam, and you can actually tell us, give us the nutshell version of what you covered in season 1.
Wow, it's a lot.
I know, it's a tall order, right? Yeah.
The backdrop is a zombie virus that creates a zombie apocalypse, and we've got 4 kids that are stuck fending for themselves.
3 kids, Josh. 3
kids.
I don't want to know what happened to that 4th kid.
Yeah,
he didn't make it.
3 kids, and they have to find their way back to their parents. They get separated from their parents in the first, in the second episode or third episode, and they have to find their way back. And so we touch on all kinds of topics, but the backdrop is this virus that turns people into zombies.
Oh, there we go. All right. Well, perfect to have you here. And obviously, we're not talking about a zombie virus. We're talking about a different real world virus. And we'll get into that in just a moment. Now, everybody who's watching, you know what to do. You can click on the Zoom meeting link, or you can use the one tap from your smartphone, or you can call us at 669-900-6833 and enter the meeting code. Earl will say hello to you, and then he will patch you through. And I'm sure you've got questions or thoughts, so let's hear them. By the way, there is a password on tonight's Zoom meeting, so you can see that on screen in the upper left-hand corner. Make sure you type that one in when you call in to join the conversation. And by the way, I introduced Josh and Wendy, but we also have audio tonight from Dr. Anand Swaminathan. I hope I got that right. Anand Swaminathan. I know it's going to take a little bit of time. Give us really quickly, just tell us how you know him. I know he's part of Shabam, but what his specialty is.
So he is an emergency medicine doctor, and he works at St. Joseph's Hospital in Paterson, New Jersey. And the other show that Wendy and I work on, he is the main host of the show, but he works clinically, and he's generally awesome. We love him. So he agreed to talk to us a little bit. So we got some audio from him dealing with this exact question that we're dealing with. So.
Well, I'm very happy about that we have some terrific audio to play for our audience tonight. And again, looking for their comments and questions around that. Should start a very interesting conversation. Your interview is so good, though. I want to go ahead and tease it up front that we will play more of that in a supplemental episode of Mission Log to be released later, because he's got some great content there. And he has a fantastic story about Leonard Nimoy. So we definitely have to
gotta wait for that one. Yeah.
We have to share it for the world. We really do. Yeah. So coming up really quickly from Mission Log. Now, Mission Log Live is taking a little bit of a break. We're going on hiatus after tonight's show for a number of reasons, but hang on, don't worry. Not only are we working on our other new shows, we are going to check in with you all from time to time too. So Earl, Norman, and I will be around, just not as often, but we will check in with you, I promise, looking at some video options to do that. Also, Norman and I have been doing Patreon exclusive hangouts. We'll announce more over at patreon.com/missionlog. And it's just an opportunity to get together online in a casual, friendly way to say hello to each other. We hope that you'll join us for the next one. Finally, Larry Nemeczek, Dr. Trek himself, has teamed up with a friend of the show, Dr. Ali Matu, to bring you a new show, Life Support Live, Saturdays at noon Pacific time, exploring the psychological and mental health topics raised by characters and stories of Star Trek. You can join that show live through Skype at Life Support Live, or you can simply watch on youtube.com/The Psych Show. You can also get all the details on Larry's Facebook page, Larry Nemeczek's Trekland. Hey, in the tradition of Mission Log Live, we have a poll question each week. Last week, we wrapped up Picard Season 1, and we asked you what you want out of Picard Season 2. Wendy, Josh, did you both watch Season 1 of Picard? Are you caught up?
No. I'm on.
No.
So here's the thing. So I'm watching TNG with my 10-year-old.
Okay.
And we're not through it yet. So I have been dying because I want to watch it so bad, but I'm like, we got to get through TNG first before we jump over to it. Josh says I don't have to.
Don't watch it with your 10-year-old.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, let's just get that out of the way right up front.
Good to know. Okay.
Yeah, not intended for a 10-year-old.
Fantastic.
And yes. Josh, you have all this free time now, so.
Well, no, I'm on like episode 4.
Okay.
And so, but I think it's great so far. I think it's really good. They do a lot of, they play with a lot of interesting ideas. I think it's cool. I'm enjoying it.
Excellent.
Especially since I, grew up on TNG. So this is good.
Very cool. Well, as you both know, it's one big arc for the 10 episodes. We asked our audience, what do you want for season 2? Do you want another serialized arc, or do you want standalone stories? So close on this. I'm actually shocked. 49.8% of you said you want a serialized arc. 50.2% of you said you want standalone stories.
Wow.
So I guess we literally have to split the difference there. And who knows what we'll get in season 2. But yeah, I thought that was pretty fascinating.
I would not have thought it would have gone that way. I'm thinking like serial arc, especially with everybody being, I mean, just like everybody being so like home and stir crazy, like you want to like tune in for like what's going to happen next kind of thing. So I'm surprised.
Yeah, pretty shocking. I was really surprised at that. Now, this week, in honor of our guest and the topic tonight, what we'll be getting into, we asked you, do the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few? Well, 83% of you said yes, 17% of you said no. But of course, like every poll question on Mission Log, there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of gray area. We are definitely going to get into that gray area tonight. So without further ado, let's get into it. I mean, I don't know if you both saw it, but I shared in our document here before the show, our listener, Scott, had written, I'm sure that there are many Scotts who listen to the show, but just one particular Scott sent a couple of very interesting emails looking at the ideas of the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few, and how we have to sort of celebrate and protect individuality while we also protect masses of people, right? And he said, it was interesting, he had this shift where he started to think differently about his own position. So I just want to read through some highlights of this very quickly to get into our conversation.
Yeah.
Scott says, my initial email to you regarding needs of the many referenced the idea that, quote, it's better 1,000 guilty go free than one innocent suffer, end quote. And throughout my entire life, I believe that wholeheartedly. But in this particular case, I find myself wondering if the opposite should be true. Should those suspected of being sick be forced to self-isolate or otherwise in order to protect the healthy? Should their traces be exposed for the benefit of many, no matter how small the indiscretion? On these answers, despite my previous attitudes in the current state of affairs, I am honestly finding that my morals are at a standstill and sometimes betray me, which is very, very scary to me and scares me about the future politics of the world. And let's give a couple of his samples here. In South Korea, for example, they're literally backtracking phone and credit records of the sick in order to identify potential exposure. And in the process have ended up outing extramarital affairs and other such social privacy issues. addictions, briberies, etc. But yet this process has worked for them to limit the exposure and the advance of coronavirus. Here in America, my insurance company doesn't know that I'm a smoker. But if we were to implement that level of tracking, what would and could the implications be? How far should we let it happen, and for how long? Governments have a long established history that once they gain the ability to do something, they rarely give up. And even if and when they claim to give it up, they may pass that ability on to another agency, whether government or corporate. So yes, my original question stands up, but the answers are now so much more gray than they ever seemed just 3 months ago. And even as a holier-than-thou Trek evangelophile, we're evangelists, Trek evangelists, I cannot satisfactorily weigh my true feelings on these current affairs against my own morals. It is indeed a strange time to be living in, and one that I only ever thought would occur in sci-fi novels like Stephen King's The Stand. Wow. So that is the email that launched this particular episode, and he sent that email a few weeks ago. Things have, of course, escalated and developed, and there are so many other complications and nuances to this. Initial thoughts, Josh and Wendy. I know that there are many nuances we will get into tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like when you first talked to us about this, John, and sort of brought up this idea, and Josh and I were kind of talking about it, I was really conflicted, like right off the bat, because I think that it's hard to really look at it as simply as the example, right? And you have to start asking the question, like, who are the many, who are the few in the situation? Like, if we take social distancing, that's pretty clear, right? We're deciding to stay home. We're deciding to limit what we do in order to benefit the larger group. But then when you start to look at like the lasting repercussions, like he mentions, like how long this goes on and what's necessary to actually do tracking and figure these things out, when does that shift? And when does it become the losses beyond the health losses become so much larger that even more people are impacted, and who the few and the many are switch. So I think that's the first sort of complicating factor of this.
I think also even the needs, what the needs are, is also not black and white, right? Like in what he's talking about is the need to give up your privacy and where you've gone and track your location. Well, what if that's not the need? Like, we don't have to do that in this country. And I mean, I'm not an expert in epidemiology at all, but like, we have a problem of just getting people to stay home and forget tracking by phone. Like we have problems getting people to realize you're staying home for other people.
No, yes. We got to go to the beach, Josh. I mean,
exactly. We have to go to Mardi Gras. And we got to go to Mardi Gras. They're still doing Mardi Gras. We're going to go do it.
Yeah. Like we need that.
But so that's, we have this problem already. Like we're not even there yet where we're actually giving up our privacy, but I think yes. Well, like Wendy said, it's who are the few, who are the many, what are the needs? Like, and this is one of the things that we talked about with Anand was like, when you think about, let's say, if you're talking about vaccinations, who are you going to vaccinate? There isn't an unlimited supply of vaccinations. In that case, maybe the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to play that clip, but
I would love to play that clip. That was the perfect segue. It's like we've done this a million times. So, Earl, if you could play that clip, please, Dr. Swami, clip 2 about vaccinations.
Like if you're talking about the need,
I'm assuming he's got it
for a vaccine. It seems
and
to me,
I'm assuming it'll start
public health
playing any moment now.
The need to vaccinate the healthcare workers, which are the few, outweighs the need of the whole population right in the beginning to get vaccinated, because those are the people that need to have the most protection.
Yeah, and I think you do have to make those decisions in that direction, and obviously, I have a vested interest in getting the vaccine first, but I do think that you want to keep physicians, nurses, PAs, NPs at work. And a vaccine will allow us to do that. And not only will it allow us to do it, it'll allow us to possibly do it without all of the protective equipment that we're using right now, or maybe less of that. And it'll allow us to go into situations where it's a dangerous situation without the vaccine. But now that I'm vaccinated and I'm immune, it's not a dangerous situation, which means I can actually give better care than I otherwise could, because I'm delaying care, or, I'm having to make adjustments to what I can provide because of the risk to my own health. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a good example of where you need to get to the few first. Obviously, if we had unlimited vaccine, it's not an issue, right? So again, it makes it not so black and white. The gray is, how many vaccines do we actually have and who should get them first? It's a really tough decision to try and make and figure out. And again, I'm happy I don't have to make the decision. I just have to go along with whatever decision gets made, because I don't know how to do it. I mean, older people should probably be vaccinated first because they're more likely to get really bad disease. And sort of in a really backwards way, kids should be vaccinated last, because kids don't get critical illness from COVID-19. From everything that we know to this point, kids between the ages of like 1 and 12 just don't really get very sick. So they should be the last group that we hit with vaccinations, except for the kids that have chronic illness, who should probably be getting it before older people get it. But right. I don't have to make that decision.
So excellent clip. And by the way, nicely done on the animation, Earl. And sorry, I talked over that, but it was very cool. He brings up exactly the point that when we first started talking about the show tonight, really sort of shifted my way of thinking. And you posed it very nicely, both of you, by saying, who are the few and who are the many? If hypothetically there is a vaccine available tomorrow, but there are only so many of those doses to go around, how do we determine who gets that? And we might all, sitting here, and the people who are watching and listening to the show, we might all agree that frontline healthcare workers should be the ones to get that right away. But as soon as you eliminate that group, how do you then determine who the next group is that should get the next dose of that? It right. really shifted my thinking on not simply needs of the many versus needs of the few, who are those people, but literally triaging how you determine who gets treatment, who gets care. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, that's what public health policy is, right? Like, you're trying to figure out, like, how do we keep the most amount of people healthy and safe? And sometimes that means you have to choose one group over the other, because, like, yes, like you definitely want to give vaccines to people who are the most vulnerable. But when you have to, like he said, when you have to choose between immunocompromised kids who have a whole life ahead of them, presumably, and vulnerable, old people, then that becomes this thorny situation. You have to decide who you're going to give that vaccine to. And I thought it was funny because he was like, I don't need to make that decision. The public health people make that for me. But
right. But I think that kind of brings up, like, this is the darker side of that, and the decision that a lot of doctors are starting to have to make, which is crazy, which is the other side of this is, who gets the treatment now for the illness? Like, who gets the ventilators? So, we have physicians that we work with, that we know, that are having to decide, does this person get the ventilator or does this person get the ventilator? Because there's only so many of them. So is it an age cutoff? Is it how many, kids does this person have that they're going to need to take care of? Like, what are those questions that are coming into this in terms of who gets those resources? So I think that there's that question is there as well. On the other side, it's nice to think about it with vaccines, but the darker side of this is, if you take that same objective, logical Vulcan view of it, right. There is this, this population of people who, have more of their life left. Do we say no, we reserve the ICU beds for the younger sick people versus the older sick people. And that if we're really maxed out on our resources to the hospital, who gets those resources? And those are real questions that doctors are facing that they've never had to face before. Sure, they triage, but they're not saying, look, here is a patient who I could save if I had a ventilator, but I have to choose to save this other person who needs it. And this is really the first time that that's happened for this generation. And it's really unprecedented. So I think that question keeps coming up of like, who do we help?
And I think also to that point, like what Swami also brought up, was that you can be in a situation where you have some old guy come in and he's like, he needs the ventilator, and you only have, let's say you're at the point where you only have 1 or 2 ventilators. Are you going to say, I'm going to save this ventilator for when a 25-year-old comes in, or am I going to use this now for this guy? Because the 25-year-old may never come in, and then you've deprived someone of a ventilator that you could have given him. So like, these are all these thorny questions that you have to deal with. But I feel like then on a greater level, that's why the many have to sacrifice and stay at home, right? Because you don't want to overwhelm the healthcare system, and you don't want people to have to make that decision or more of these decisions than they already have to make, right? Like that's
right. Well, and we were sort of talking about degrees here of sacrifice. Like it is an easier sacrifice to make, clearly, for people to stay at home and not potentially spread this further than it has to go, than it is for doctors and nurses and other healthcare practitioners to have to decide among many who gets treatment and who doesn't. Clearly, there's just no comparison between those two things. And there's a clip that I know that we're not going to play tonight, but will end up in the edited version that we do later, where he also, I'm so glad that he brought this up, he talks about how, look, these doctors, human beings who have to deal with other human beings day in and day out, absolutely bring an emotional component to their level of decision making as well. And I know that we talk about this on Mission Log as well. There's something about saving the one person that you know, where you're more emotionally invested in the outcome than maybe those that you don't know, where it's easier to separate yourself from that issue. Again, these frontline healthcare workers are dealing with that every single day, where, sure, he says, yeah, it would be easy to just put on my Vulcan mind, just remove the emotions out of the equation, but I can't do that. There's absolutely no way to do that.
And they know you can't do that, right? That's why they don't allow you to make that decision for that patient, right? Like that's.
Yeah, exactly. I know that we are waiting for Ria, who's having a little bit of trouble on the line here with us, but I would like to go ahead and play the next clip because you have something that I think is very interesting where Swami brings up. He brings, wait a minute. Actually, we're going to hold off on that. We actually get to go with Ria. So I want to bring in Ria to the show, calling in. Hello, Ria.
Hello, John. And all.
Hi, how are you guys? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. And I say that, I don't know. Okay. So I got tested today. I probably contracted COVID about 6 weeks ago. Yeah.
6 weeks ago. Wow.
At the airport, because I've got that little side gig cleaning airplanes in exchange for flight benefits. Yeah. But this like social isolation stuff, I freaking love it. Oh my God. I'm like living my life.
So it's not a sacrifice for you at all.
Not at all. And full-time telework. I mean, like, I don't want it to go back to, finger quotes normal. Yeah. So been loving life. Got a weight set for home, so I don't have to go to the gym. Been doing yard work. I've got some wood to chop, so that'll be another workout. Anyway, enough about me. So yeah, I'm coming at this from the perspective of somebody who is loving this. I haven't lost my job. I'm not hurting for money. I'm doing great, even though I probably have COVID. And also coming from someone who wasn't raised American, being a Greek American, whatever, what y'all were talking about earlier, just what kind of jumped out at me was, in the US, it's not so much that people refuse to stay home, it's that people refuse to be told to stay home. It's people are not going to have the government telling them to stay home. Versus in Greece, there's a lockdown and there's like a 1,500 euro fine or something crazy if you're found out, wandering around unauthorized. In different countries, those kind of social measures are so much more effective. In the US, just culturally, you can't have that kind of top-down control like you can in, for example, China. In the US, and reading some of the comments about, everyone kind of being heroes and making the decisions. In the US, it has to be a grassroots thing. It has to be where we're deciding that we're going to stay home. And I don't watch the news, which is another thing that why I love life. But apparently there are protests out there, is what Facebook says. And you know what? I'm not going to go there. But
That's okay.
Yeah. So again, I'm in this weird position because I love this so much, knowing that so many people out there are suffering and hurting and, broke and all this stuff. And so it's so easy for me to say, oh yeah, stay home, chop wood in your backyard.
Sure.
But I did want to point a couple things out. What finally, because I had gone in twice, to see the doctor, and they didn't want to test me because I'm, healthy and relatively, I wouldn't say young, but, and the tests are at a premium, and I live in Nebraska where, we're kind of behind the curve on a lot of things. So I understood why they didn't want to test me. But what finally got me the order to get tested today was COVID toes. And I wanted to bring that up because I hadn't heard about that till yesterday. So Google COVID toes. The same time I got sick, the beginning of March, I got this rash on some of my toes. I'm like, oh, that's odd. I even thought that maybe something had bit me, and that's why I was feeling sick. But then over the next few days, it went from little pink bumps to purple bruises, and I had a couple toes just swell up like crazy. This sounds disgusting. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I haven't heard of that until now. So
there's a new amount of dermatological signs that are coming up that aren't just toes, but they're seeing it. It's a new thing.
Yeah, because where it's so lethal is when it gets in people's lungs, and for other people, it's manifesting in impeded circulation, that kind of thing. And so that's where I was seeing it. So I wanted to throw that out there. If you see weird things going on with your toes, might be a sign. And right from the get-go, I had a morning where I could not wake up, and I could not wake up until 2:30 in the afternoon. That's not normal for me. Usually when my bladder's up, I'm up, and there's no getting around it. But anyway, I kind of.
But I think you bring up this good point. I think it's hard to see why we need to do these sacrifices if, for a lot of people, they don't have any symptoms. They don't have any, they probably don't even have COVID, right? So, you're having to sacrifice your job. You're having to not go to work. You're having to, you're losing money. You're not seeing your friends. You're not doing this stuff for stuff that you're not seeing. And only for people like you who are like, oh, there's something actually wrong here. Is it clear that no, this is why we have to sacrifice so that we can flatten the curve and we can all make it out. And I think part of the problem is that there's no immediacy to it, right? There's no if I do this, I can see the effects of me doing this. Mm-hmm. Someone gets saved right away. That's not, right. Where this quote came from was from the scene in Star Trek with Spock. Yeah, Wrath of Khan, where
greatest movie of all time.
Right. So, but the effects are really immediate in that case, right? And so, actually, that's.
I think the other part of this that makes it just so sort of confounding is that if we all stay home and it works and we don't get sick, there's the side people are going to be like, well, see, we didn't need to stay home because nobody got sick.
Well, they're already saying that.
You know,
Yeah.
right?
They're
But that's the
already
thing.
saying
It's like it actually creates not a response. Like it prevents the response, or it prevents it. So it's even like more confounding because you're not only not seeing the immediate effect of it, it's not actually happening, right? Like if we're effective in this process, we will have eliminated it. And that's the thing, right? That's what makes it so people can't understand it.
Josh, you shared a link with me earlier that was from Emily Landon.
Yeah.
And I'll put this link in the show notes or elsewhere.
She's great.
That people can see it. She's absolutely wonderful, terrific speaker, and just terrific at being able to put these things into perspective. But labeled as explaining what success looks like. And you pulled my favorite quote from it. In the end, you're going to think it was all for nothing. And that's the point. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's it would be an absolutely perfect outcome if we all felt like, oh, wow, we did all that stuff and it was for nothing because we were actually successful at doing what it is that we need to do. I absolutely love the way she summed that up.
And the nothing is so far out into the future, right? Like if you just diffused a bomb, it's like, oh, it didn't blow up. We definitely felt the effects of that, even though nothing happened. But this is like, the nothing is in 10 months when, 100,000 people didn't die or.
Well, and I think this speaks to something that is a little bit difficult about wrapping our heads around science and scientific process and scientific modeling of what's going on. We assume that when something comes from the mouth of a scientist or an expert, that it is prescriptive. They're telling us exactly what is happening right now, and this is the way that it will be, as opposed to understanding in a more sort of abstract way that science is being descriptive, and science is the method by which we come to that knowledge. So where we are right now, we're looking in hindsight at all the data that has added up. So when we look at models that say, oh, okay, well, worst case scenario, X hundreds of thousands or millions of people could die. But guess what? Now we get to adjust that day by day, hour by hour as new data comes in. That's a good thing. But it doesn't mean that a scientist has sort of decided this is how it will be. It means that they're able to take in new information and constantly update what those models look like. I see a lot of misrepresentation when I just sort of look at conversation around what scientists are actually saying about what's going on. I'm sure that you see the same thing.
Well, I think that goes back to what Ria was saying with you have people protesting, and it's difficult to get people to do the thing that you want them to do because, I think there's a little bit of I don't trust the experts problem in this country. Like I don't think most people actually think of it the way you just described it, John. Like I think, the New York Times had an article, an opinion piece where the guy was basically like, scientists don't know anything more than some random person on Twitter. And I was like, why are we writing this? But
yeah. Well, hey, Ria, first of all, I want to ask you, you said that you think that you might have had this starting as far back as more than a month ago or so. Mm-hmm. Were you okay? Are you okay? Just sort of let us know what the progress has been, where you are.
Oh yeah, I'm good. Like I said, I had the fatigue. Basically, I was told, yeah, you've got a virus. We're not going to test you. Drink lots of fluids, kind of thing. But the fatigue never went away. What else? Just the sore throat, the coughing. Went back to the doctor last week, and he said, oh, yeah, you've got some virus. We don't know what it is, but you probably have some bacteria, so here's some antibiotics.
Yay! Don't get me started.
I spent about 10 years without taking antibiotics. But here's the thing, though, is that during this time, I was, once a week going to the grocery store. Okay, I went to Menards. All right, I'm sorry. Because I thought I just had a cold. Where else did I go? A couple other places.
Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras. I went to the beach, you know.
Yeah, normal stuff.
And I've been going for walks, and I was on a walk yesterday, and I smelled, you know, weed, and it just like, it was overpowering. And it was a block away. There were about 40 people having a party in the park.
Wow.
Anyway, whatever. But in the meantime, like I said, I've been out and about. I've like touched produce at the grocery store. Like, I kind of wonder if I've killed anybody. It's kind of a weird feeling. But,
yeah, it is very strange. I mean, every little step that you take, everything that you do, at least in my head, I sort of go like, oh, okay, I made it through the week, and now I'm going to go to the grocery store, but I'm resetting the clock when I do that.
Yeah.
You know, that's really tough to sort of wrap your head around and say.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like the new numbers. So Mel, who's our co-host on Shabam, is also an ER doc, and he's actually like literally writing a chapter on COVID right now. And I was talking to him yesterday, and they're saying that it's looking like the new numbers for asymptomatic actual infection is 50%. So that half of the people who have it have zero symptoms. It could be that high. So even if you think you're resetting the clock by going to the store, you may have had it from your last store trip, and have no symptoms. So that's the thing that I think that makes this just even crazier.
And to be honest, you know, the best advice that I heard early on when all of this started was, don't walk through your life as if you were trying to avoid catching this. Walk through your life as if you have it and you're trying to avoid giving it to someone else.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you might be talking to a murderer right now because, you know.
Well, that sounds a bit personal, Rhea. I thought we were friends.
Which one of us are you talking about?
Tackling Rhea here. Because when you're, you know, needing to incentivize people to stay home, like I said, in the U.S., it can never come from the top down because that's just not the culture here. But that's kind of why I wanted to call in and like kind of get my story out there. It's like I could, you know, I might have killed people touching produce at the grocery store because at the time there really weren't tests available to test someone like me. And I was, you know, because, like John, you said, you have to go through life as though you have it and you're just trying not to spread it to anybody else, because 50%, you know, that's asymptomatic, you very well could have it. And you might not know why your toes are purple, and, you know, you still keep going to Mardi Gras. And, you know, anyway.
Hey, Rhea, I have to ask you, because earlier in the chat here, Chris said, what's the story behind that picture?
This was Destination Birmingham. I don't know if I can flip my camera around.
Yeah, no, we can see it.
See it at all?
Yeah.
Also, I don't have the lights. Yeah, I just happened to get that picture, and it turned out so great. I had to get it blown up.
So you and the bridge covered in tribbles. Very nice.
That's great. That's what happens when you clean starships. You get free bridge access, according to someone in the chat. So.
Excellent. Well, Rhea, thank you so much for calling in tonight.
Thanks for calling in.
Sharing your story with us. We got
feel better.
Caller standing by and some clips.
Great.
And yes, please take care of yourself.
And forever.
Check in with us. All right, take care.
Right, love y'all. Nighty night.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Hey, since we were about to get into it there in that discussion, I do really want to play that clip from Dr. Swamy about the immediacy of results.
Sure.
I thought that was such an interesting point that he made. So, Earl, I believe you said you had that queued up. So I will shut my mouth and I will let that start playing.
In a lot of ways, asking people to stay home for the sake of the people who are sick, that is kind of the reverse.
It's totally the reverse.
But it does have implications for the many.
Right.
So again, this is another example where this is a very complicated. In reality, there's no easy way to talk about this, right? Because it's a very complicated. It's all connected in ways that defy explanation. In a one line in a movie.
And it's immediacy too, right? So again, the line in the movie, I do X, Y happens, and Y happens right afterwards. It's a clear cause and effect. And we don't have that. We don't have the immediacy of our actions yielding results. And so people are like, okay, I'm going to do quarantine. Where's the benefit? And you're not going to see the benefit. You're not going to see the benefit for weeks to months. And now we probably are seeing the benefit now because people are saying, oh, we're not nearly seeing as many deaths as all the public health experts said we would. And I'm like, yeah, because we quarantined, right? I mean, we did the right thing. That's why we're not seeing that. So we're just starting to see the effect of the quarantine. So either we can learn from other places where they did it and they can show the benefit, or we can do it and just say, I have to have faith that this is the right thing to do and that these people are advising us properly, and then just wait it out. But because you don't have that immediacy, I think it makes it even harder for people to logically say, I'm going to stay home, give up my work, possibly give up my business that I've been building, but I'm doing it because it's going to be better for me and my family and my community. And then a week or two later, you're like, nothing's changed. I still can't go back to work. And I'm still hearing about people dying and getting sick. It just takes time for those things to really bear out. And again, we're navigating in waters that we've never seen before. We've never seen anything like this in the last 100 years. We've never seen anything like it. So we just don't know. And we're still learning as we go.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started to touch on that earlier about how the immediacy of results has an effect on how we perceive this problem. And I love that he's talking about the Wrath of Khan and talks about how Spock's actions and the result are just a very clear straight line. If I do this one thing, this will be the result. All these people will be saved. It would be nice if we could look at problems like the one that we're in the same way, but that's simply not the case. And it's very hard to know what next steps will be and what outcomes will be. Any thoughts on this clip? I thought it was really one of the most interesting perspectives on this.
Well, I think it highlights again this idea that, you know, Swami is seeing patients in the ED, like he can see the effect of, and all ER doctors can see the effect of social distancing, right? Like they can see cases go down. They can see, you know, the EDs not being overwhelmed, or they can see them being overwhelmed. So it's like for them, they can see the immediacy of what the rest of us are doing. But if you're just in your house and you're not listening to the news, or you're not, you know, and you're just kind of working on puzzles, like it's easy just to think, what am I doing this for? Like, I don't have a job, and, you know, so I just think in this case, it feels more useless because you can't see the effects. And that's a hard thing for, I think, a lot of people to kind of wrap their head around.
Right. Well, and there is this kind of an overwhelming amount of data that we're taking in as well. I mean, I heard a very interesting piece the other night on The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Shout out to a great podcast, actually the show that got me into podcasting. And they mentioned at the top of their show last week that there were two pieces of information that really just have such a profound effect in such a short amount of time. So I feel very lucky that I live in California, where we started this process very early on to kind of wind down businesses, really emphasize social distancing. We're all very lucky with that. However, there were something like 8 traceable entry points of the virus in California. California is a huge state, you know, massive population, but a huge amount of land. And they really had only narrowed it down to about 8 points of entry for the virus. New York, on the other hand, something like over 100 points of entry for the virus. So immediately they're starting with a completely different set of information and set of problems than we are here. The other very interesting thing was, and I forgot what study they were citing or where they got this information, but you can look it up, give a listen to Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Had the social distancing and other measures gone into effect just 2 weeks earlier than they did, the known cases coming out of New York would have been cut by somewhere between 50 and 80%. And yet here we are, because again, we're dealing with so many unknowns, dealing with everybody just sort of trying to live their lives and do what they think is best, but without any really clear picture of, as we saw in the movie, point A to point B leads to this particular result. It's wrapping your head around that for something as big and complex and as multifaceted as this is impossible to do.
Yeah.
It's funny we keep talking about this, and I can't help but think about the parallels between this and climate change. Like I feel like it's the same thing. Like we made all these choices for so many years that we just didn't see the repercussions of. Like we just didn't see how switching everything to plastic and like all these things that we did had this huge cumulative effect on the world. And I think that that's part of like a lot of people who are, skeptics of climate change. They're like, what's one straw going to do? Why can't I have a straw in my soda? Right. So I think there's like that sort of that feel too, like what can one person do that's actually going to make a difference? And so I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of these conversations, we just go sort of like dark and they end with like, everything sucks. And like, what are we going to do? I like every now and then try and find like a silver lining. And I'm hoping that we learn from the situation that if the small things that we are all doing can make a huge effect, and we can see this cumulative, like people's lives being saved and hospitals not being overwhelmed, that maybe we can go, hey, maybe I can make a difference just myself. Maybe if we all do something that seems very small, it can have a huge impact. And so I'm hoping that that's something that we just don't forget after all of this.
Well, hopefully what we don't forget is that it's amazing seeing the reports and satellite images of air quality indexes changing around the world and how fast that happened. The downside is how fast that may go the other direction.
Correct, which it probably will.
And that's really unfortunate. I mean, walking around LA, you look up and go, oh my God, the sky is beautiful.
Wait, you're walking around LA?
I know, it's so weird. Nobody walks in LA. So I was told by Dale Bazio.
No, I mean now. You're walking around now?
right now. Hey, let's go to Lou, who has been hanging on very patiently with some questions for us tonight. Lou, Canada's Trexpert. How are you tonight, sir?
Oh, it's been up and down, John. I don't know if your listeners are aware. I've been fighting something since February. The good news is it seems to be just a cold. The bad news is I can't get in to see my doctor because it is just a cold, or we hope. The good news is that we seem to have flattened out the curve in Ontario. Good. Cross your fingers. We're not opening anything yet. We're not unleashing the multitudes. We're keeping. We shouldn't call it social distancing. We should call it physical distancing, because socially we're actually more active, like we are with you, to bring people closer together. Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Josh. Hi, Wendy.
Hey, how are you?
How are you?
Good to see.
So, John and I go way back. I didn't want to interfere there. I mean, the good news is my girlfriend is very patient and hasn't gotten tired of me yet. Although I don't let her cook my meals, if you know what I mean. And I almost feel like I should be taking notes from you guys in terms of, okay, I have this symptom. Should I go for this more corrective? Because it's like today, if it weren't for the pandemic, I wouldn't be concerned as much about this. But I don't think that it's usual to have any kind of virus for 5 weeks. It's not impossible. Yeah. I honestly can't say I don't have it. I don't know what's wrong with me. I have a sore throat. I have dizziness. I have watery eyes and fatigue. And it gets better. It gets worse. It gets better. It gets worse. We go out once a week to shop. I'm not. My doctor said I need 24 hours without without symptoms to go out again. So it's been a tough week. That's it for the Lou Medical Report.
Thank goodness we got that. Yeah. By the way, to something that you said at the top of the call, Carrie in the chat says, "Amen, Lou. I've been more social in the past 5 weeks than I normally am. My inner introvert has been in a bit of shell shock." And that's actually a really cool upshot of all of this. I'm a very social person. I love to go out, love to see my friends, love to just go anywhere that I can. And this is a huge change for me, but it's so nice to do something that is purely social online. Obviously, I do the show like this and I have meetings like this during the day, but then to just sort of cut that off and at least for a few minutes be able to connect socially is excellent.
Well, this is what, remember we talked about this last time, that one of the side benefits, if you will, of Mission Log Live is that I get to relate to or deal with or interact with more members of the Star Trek community. And as an entertainer, there's not, and I don't have a home studio. There's not a lot I can do right now. I've sent out a couple of videos of myself here, and that's about it. But you guys sort of inspired me to kind of create some more interactive content. So I'm going to be working with a couple of people to do. I don't think it's going to be interactive, but it's going to be a Star Trek trivia quiz that I'm going to run every week. That at least gets me to focus on something other than myself and serve the needs of the many.
See, there you go. Bring it right back
Full
to the
circle,
topic, like
full
a professional.
circle.
Yes, I love it. Hey, thank you so much for calling in. I do want to get to one more clip from Dr. Swami before we say goodnight, wrap things up. I really appreciate you calling in, Lou. I'm glad you're healthy. Stay healthy.
Talk to you next week, John.
All right.
Oh, not next week. Next time.
No, next time.
Live long and prosper, guys.
Well, live long and prosper, man.
Okay.
Take care. All right. How about you two, Josh and Wendy? You've been finding that you're doing social things online, maintaining a social life?
You know, honestly, John, I'm extremely lucky. Both of us are extremely lucky that we work for a company where everybody's already working remotely. Mm-hmm. And so the only effect that I feel is when, you want to go out with your family. It's not, in terms of the job, thankfully that's there's no problem there. But have you seen this cartoon where it shows it's like this cartoon character and then the bottom, and he's giving the look to the camera, and the bottom is like when you realize that your normal life is like quarantine. Yeah. Yes. I felt like that a little bit because I'm like, oh, we're staying home and we're not going anywhere. And I was like, oh, damn, now I really do want to go somewhere and I don't have the option to. Why the hell didn't I do that before? But no, we're doing good.
Well, yeah, and I feel so sorry, John. I was just going to say with Ria's quote, when she said she's loving it, there's parts of me that kind of love it too. But I also feel like, the other side of that is this is really, really hard for so many people. And we're in a unique position where we're able to work from home. And, we have a few jobs. One of them happens to be producing a medical podcast. So, obviously that's really needed right now, medical education for people. But but it's we just, we don't want to come off as flip or insensitive to some of the people who might be listening who, they can't work from home. They don't have the option of working from home. And this is really hard. And it's not just that they can't see their friends, that the just stay home isn't as simple as, oh, it's harder. I teach at a university and I have to do all my classes online. Oh, boo-hoo. I still get to do that. Whereas other people have no option. So
other people have to go in.
Yeah, some people have to go in and some people can't go in, are not allowed to go in and can't pay rent, So I think that there's that side of it too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so many people are getting hit in different ways, and the statistics of the numbers of people who are unemployed in Los Angeles alone, just absolutely shocking, and all of that within a very short period of time. We do have one more caller standing by, but I do want to go to this last clip that is sort of a summary of a lot of these topics. And then I'll say it again at the end of the show, but I do want to encourage people, keep an eye out for let's call it the mega mix of Dr. Swami. We'll get together and record a wraparound for that. But I will drop that into the main Mission Log feed because I think this interview is so good. He makes so many wonderful points, and he's got fun stories, like a story with Leonard Nimoy that I want you all to hear. So, Earl, if you don't mind, go ahead and play clip 8, and then we will pop over and say hi to Steve before we say goodnight.
No, I think the line makes a lot of sense in theory, to be able to say, one person gives their life to save hundreds, thousands, whatever it is, but it's so much more gray instead of black and white in real life. And this pandemic really brings a lot of that out. How many grays, how many different inputs there are that we're trying to take into account when we're making those decisions. And I think sometimes the needs of the few are actually something that helps the many, like you talked about with the vaccination for healthcare workers. And sometimes the needs of the few really do outweigh the needs of the many. And sometimes it is the other way around. And we are on the front lines. We're trying to figure out what decision we make that's going to be the best for everybody. But then we're also faced with a single patient in front of us and what decision is going to be best for them. And sometimes those two things run contrary to each other, but more of the time they're running parallel or they're running slightly askew. And it's not easy for me to say, if I do this, other people will be able to benefit, but the person in front of me won't. And sometimes we make the decision thinking this will be the best for everybody, and then it's not. And sometimes we make the decision thinking it's probably not going to be best for everyone, and it is. It's just too difficult to know, and it's much easier afterwards to say the decision I made wasn't the best decision, or the decision I made was actually a really good one, or the decision I didn't make was also a good one. I think it's just too difficult to have that simple cause and effect. And the immediacy with which some of the things that we have to do actually come to bear makes it even more difficult.
All right. Yeah.
Oh,
that's it.
I was muted there for a second. Yeah, I love that this sort of puts a bird's eye view on everything. And again, I hope that people will give a listen to the later full interview that we play. But before we say goodnight tonight, I do want to jump over to Steve, who has been standing by patiently. Steve, welcome to the show.
Good morning, John, and happy birthday for the other day. My Star Trek pal.
Thank you so much. That's very nice. I had a very interesting birthday.
It looks like, yes.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Well, everything is very strange at the moment, isn't it?
Yes.
Very, very strange indeed. But the jumping off point for the discussion on social media for this episode was all about the classic Spock quote of the needs of the many and the needs of the few. And each of us have to make that decision in every experience that we have. And we have to pass it by that filter. We have to decide, am I deciding something really selfishly, or am I thinking about what is best for the society that I live in? And all the Starfleet captains make every decision by that basis, according to those rules. And we do too. And it's scary and bad, but every single thing that we do, we just have to think, what's the best thing for the people, for the community that we live in? It's simple as that.
That's very well said. It's a lesson in empathy. And
Empathy, precisely.
If there's anything that it is discouraging about what we're all going through, it's that you see sometimes the worst nature of people and a lack of empathy among some people. But at our best, we are showing tremendous empathy and tremendous compassion to each other, to ourselves and in the interest of helping everybody else to get through this and see a better day on the other side. I think that's so, I think it's so delightful to see that. It's delightful to see that people are actively participating in this because they realize that this problem is bigger than themselves and bigger than their personal needs. So yeah, what a way to tie that back into our morals, meanings, messages that we get from Trek.
Yes, absolutely. I think
that was lovely.
Where are you calling from tonight, by the way, Steve?
Still in the northeast of England, my friend.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you for staying up late or morning. Or I know it's morning, but did you stay up late or did you get up early?
It's gone 4 a.m. I think. I try not to.
Oh.
Well, the thing is, my place of work is shut down. I am just going through each day as it comes and trying to stay sane. And my partner is awesome and she's working from home. And we're together, Megan and I, we're perfectly fine. And we're grateful for the fact that we're able to be fine and contained within our home when we get to go outside again and see the people that we love. We can't wait for that moment.
Yeah. Well,
can I just say one thing, John? Like, I feel like you can definitely see examples of people not having empathy or like not, like the stories come out about the worst in people. But I do think that when you end up, like I've seen way more stories and examples of people who are wanting to help and who are doing things that kind of reaffirm your faith in humanity,
Oh, absolutely.
I think unfortunately sometimes the negative voices turn out to be loudest, but it's not like they're the most numerous, and so I that is hopeful to me too.
And whilst we're completely shut down, we were having a conversation on Facebook earlier this afternoon about great series that people hadn't seen. And there's, I think it was Billy Wilder, The Apartment.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And someone recommended it to me. And within 10 minutes on Facebook, one of our neighbors popped the DVD through my letterbox.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
And that was Elaine. And thanks to her.
That's
a wonderful movie. So
yeah,
enjoy. It's fantastic.
Can't wait to see
Shirley
it.
MacLaine, Jack Lemmon, enjoy it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really great.
Yeah, Josh, to put that in scientific terms, I think very often we have a sampling error.
Yes.
When we allow news to kind of sway us, and obviously we focus on the outliers. We focus on the things that are negative just because they are so strange, and it gives us a sampling error about what's actually happening in the world. So read the news, but read it carefully. Remember, it's not always representative.
Right. And there's also like I think it's a part of seeking out stories too. Like, it's about you don't want to do confirmation bias where you like find stuff that you already think is true, and then you already think things are bad. Then you look at things that confirm that things are bad, and things are bad, and then things are worse. That's just no
confirmation bias. And others, we should just do a whole show on logical fallacies. Gosh, I wonder. Go check out Shabam, people. All right, Steve. Thank you so much. Good morning to you.
Thank you, John. Good morning.
Take care of yourself. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for calling in, Steve, and get some sleep.
Yes, buddy.
All right.
Hey, Josh, Wendy, this has flown by, and I realize that there is so much to talk about. I can't thank you enough for doing this, for joining me, and I look forward to releasing the rest of the audio to everybody so they can hear that fantastic interview that you did with Dr. Swami.
Yeah.
So cool. And please remind us all, Shabam obviously is at the Roddenberry Podcast Network, podcast.roddenberry.com. Where else can they follow you?
So I want to do 2 shout outs. One, obviously, to Shabam, specifically for those of you guys out there that have kids. It's a family friendly podcast that is geared towards kids, but adults love it too. But we kind of are finding that we were strangely like, we made the show a while ago and it's just so relevant to what's happening. But if you your kids want to understand like how the immune system works and what viruses do and what the public health system is like we go into all of that, and we go into sort of like what the infrastructure is and how things shut down, which we sort of saw, we saw supply chain issues with different products and things like that. And it hasn't gotten to quite the Shabam level. Thankfully, we haven't lost electricity or communication yet. So hopefully we won't, but just, I think it's a great sort of fictionalized version of what could happen, and the parallels are there. And then as we were sort of hinting at in the end, we get at this idea of thinking scientifically and not getting caught in what we call brain traps about these things, and really thinking about the science and knowing what to trust, especially when you're being hit with so much misinformation all the time. So certainly check that out. And then I want to do one more. I know it seems like just from the comments and what people are saying that like the sort of medical side of it. I mean, Josh and I are not doctors. We work with a lot of doctors, but Mel, who is our co-host on Shabam, has a show for laymen called This Won't Hurt a Bit. And they've done 2 episodes on COVID-19, and they just released their second one this week. But they're really looking at sort of taking questions from people like, do I, when I go outside, do I need to wear a mask? All these things from the doctors.
Can I get COVID-19 for my dog?
Exactly. Can I get it from my dog? Yeah. Right. So they break it down and use it in layman's terms. So if you're like, oh, I want more information from doctors that aren't on TV.
Good call. Yeah.
This might be a good source for you. So this won't hurt a bit.
It's great. Yeah. This Won't Hurt a Bit is awesome.
Excellent. I'll make sure to share that out. I'll make sure to share that out and put it in the notes. But just to remind everybody, podcast.roddenberry.com to find Shabam.
Yes, please.
Such an excellent show, so well produced. And again, just coincidentally ties in with so many of the issues that we're talking about here. A couple of notes from the audience just before we go. Josh, a little shout out to you there. Crystal says, I agree, Josh. Giving helps tremendously. So back to what you were saying before. And then Carlos.
Crystal, thanks.
Carlos says, I heart when the Shabam guys are on. So thank you for saying
come
that,
back anytime. We love being on the show. I'm blushing.
Thank you again both so much. Thank you for what you did on Shabam as well. We look forward to more. Remember, everybody, podcast.roddenberry.com. Mission Log is produced by the Roddenberry Entertainment, Roddenberry Entertainment executive producer, Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log by the incredible Earl Green. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from the Roddenberry Podcast Network. Mission Log Live, Women at War Priority 1, The Trek Files, your daily Star Trek news, and Shabam. If you would like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/Mission Log. Hey, I know it's the last show before we go away a little bit for a hiatus. Remember, we're still here for you. Mission Log carries on. The Roddenberry Podcast Network carries on. We're working on new things, and we will check in with you. And please continue to check in with us. You know where to reach us. Facebook.com/MissionLogPod. Send us an email, missionlog@roddenberry.com. Or if you're on Patreon with us, we'll have this live kind of one-on-one chat as well. Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us live or is joining us later. Please stay safe. Stay healthy. We will talk to you again. Live long and prosper.